writing these, you know, what was supposed to be one book, which turned out to 18, and 12 vampires and 6 werewolf books. I was, you know, having a lot of fun. Because as I'm sitting there, I could put the things in there that refer to us. I could put, I could have, you know, Sister Marlene, you know, come with her Yoruba perspective and pour libations before, you know, they opened up on the stage. And that the libations she poured were actually ways to keep the demons off of people in the audience when they went home that night. I could have somebody saying the 23rd Psalm to back something up, and somebody had, you know, a little something to put in a white bath to make sure that, you know, nothing bothered you, or you didn't carry home an STD, a sexually transmitted demon, you know. I got crazy mess in my books, okay? And I'll just be laughing out loud because, see, nobody was watching me when I was doing this. And they let me do a lot of crazy stuff in the name of science fiction. So I found that there was a freedom place. See, if I was doing it as regular fiction, I was running up against a lot of brick walls in terms of things I could or could not do. What in the name of paranormal? Oh, if it's, it's a spell, Leslie? Yeah, it's a spell. Go ahead. It would pass right on through. So that also allowed me to have what I call an ensemble cast of strong black men. All right, they didn't all have to be bad guys. Right. They didn't all have to be thugs, you know, in order to sell the books. I could make them gangster, but I could make them gangster on the good side. I could have them, you know, fighting demons and having, you know, these very articulate brothers that, you know, had their dreadlocks and their tall, you know, chocolate selves or their tall, bald selves. And I could just do all these different flavors of black men. I was just like, oh, I like that kind and that kind. You know, I could put them in there, you know, and put them in there in a good way. I could have women who took charge of their own femininity and their own sexuality and their own power, who didn't fall and cry when the demon came. Girlfriend, you know, gets up and pulls a razor out her boot. She got something for it, you know. So I'm like, I want to show that, you know, and yet these characters that I've been able to create are not characters that, you know, are coming from, you know, I'm not supposed to say this, but they're not the kind of Buffy-esque characters where they're in school and they have, you know, like this money from somewhere, bless you, and we don't know where the money comes from. I mean, they're like people that were castaway people from the neighborhood. You know, one person has been to prison and for a wrongful charge, you know. Another person's an alcoholic that recovered and whatever and came from the trailer parks of Kentucky, you know. I go around and pick people who are throwaway people from every ethnic group, every religion, and, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it makes it for a more colorful world. It's like the way I grew up in the city. Like if you're from Chicago, you're from a big city, you know, it's not just one kind of people. It's a diaspora of people. It's multicultural and multi-ethnic, and so I mix people up. You know, I have a kid from the barrio, and who's maybe his grandma has, you know, Saint whoever on, and the praying hands of Jesus on, and a little Santeria in her back pocket, okay, because grandma got something for that too, over in the barrio. Mixed up with the girl who has like the southern grandma, you know, who got a little something from, you know, Louisiana for you if you got something for her. So I want to show like cultures and the mix of cultures and how all of it's valid. It's not like just one story is valid, you know. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. Like I said, it started off to be one book, and I'm out. And I got hooked, and I got bitten, whatever. But I couldn't turn back.
Thank God.
So, yes. So what I'm going to do, real quick before I read this, here's the other thing that I cannot, you know, have this conversation without mentioning. I work work in text, MS Word, I'm black and white, I can't draw, whatever. It wasn't until I met Eric Battle, who at a book signing, thank you. And wait, I have to do the Battle thing, because this is where the collision of different art forms comes together and creates something new. He was able to read, you know, a little bit of my characters, and we sat together and kicked it, and he came back and went bam and put down this, he just clowned in his portfolio. He just like put this portfolio down, and I'm like, you went inside my head and you made my characters. And to have them come to life on the page, I was like, oh, he captured the essence of who they were. And because he captured the essence of my characters, I put them on my website, because at this point, the publisher, like a publisher of novels, they don't deal with that. You know, they're like, we don't do graphics. We don't, you know, words, Leslie, regular words. So I was like, whatever, I'm putting them up. And he and I together, me telling him, me talking in my crazy non sequitur sentences, and him able to somehow be like, yeah, okay, I got it. And I'm like, how does it I'm just talking random, you know, and we're having a cup of coffee, he's having his tea, and he comes back, and it's exactly what, you know, I could not have done it, you know, any kind of way. And then took that and expanded, like came back with this double-page fight scene spread that was ridiculous. I mean, it was just so good. You know, we put it online as a wallpaper download so people could get it. The book sales, as a result of his graphics, went like this. Okay, they did a straight line up, to the point where the publisher came back to him and said, in the last 3 or 4 issues in the trade paper size, they wanted him to draw like scene breaks in the book. That's not done. Like in a regular novel, you get to the middle of the book and it's a double-page spread and that kind of stuff. That's because of Battle. Okay, they put out a sampler to try to get people to know about the series that had the art that's in his portfolio in the sampler. Okay, so, and it was because of the art in the sampler that the series got picked up seriously as a movie option, and it's because of him that it went to comics. Now, you know, that's where that came from. So, you know, it's really important. You know, I say this to anybody out here who's an author, and I have told other authors, find somebody in the art community who can bring your characters to life. I've told every author, new author I know, go find somebody who can draw your characters and put that on your website, and invite people to bring their art to your website, invite people to, you know, color it or show their own renderings of it. Like I have a forum, and there's all kinds of stuff that's all over the forum. You know, most of it, and I hate to say it, but Eric, they've taken your stuff, they bootleg it down and try to color it and whatever. I'm like, you better ask Mr. Battle, because, you know, I'm not, but you know, what people do online, but it's really, it's homage to his fine work, you know. And so we have to begin to think in terms of things collectively. We can't think in separate stovepipes, you know, anymore. One more note to that. A young lady then, well actually it's a young lady in a hip-hop band. They saw Eric's work, they read the books, so now we have art and literature, and then music came in there. Because the heroine is a spoken word hip-hop artist. So they came up with, one did a spoken word piece as the female character, sent me an MP3 file, and I sent her an email right back, can I put it up? And she was like, yeah, so I put that on the website, because I'm like, wait a minute, and then some other guys heard it, and they did some hip hop that was like crazy, you know, beats for Carlos. Since we had Damali, they wanted something for the guys. I mean, and so what starts to happen is when you bring people together from all these different disciplines, it just kind of like goes in this artistic spiral, and everybody's got their little piece in it. So, and it's all good. So I just want to say thank you for that. And with that, I will read the prologue here from Minion, which is the first book in the series. And it's sort of, the setting is the child that you'll hear about in the story, the baby, is the slayer, or the huntress, who, you know, but this is when she's a little baby in the crib, and this is where it all kind of begins, down in New Orleans 20 years ago. And this is her mother's story. Sarah Richards stood in the middle of her bedroom trying to console her infant, who was wailing at the top of her tiny lungs. Yes, she knew what pain was, and wanted to cry out as much as her baby was carrying on right now. Instead, silent tears slid down the sides of her face as she turned her chin up to the ceiling and shut her eyes. How, Lord, was a preacher's wife supposed to deal with the fact that her husband was having an affair? For months, she denied the obvious, but now her husband's lies regarding his whereabouts had been found out. He'd even violated the sanctity of their home by bringing this woman to their bed, their marital bed. Evidence in the form of the marriage violator's perfume and blood still clung to the sheets. She'd only been gone an hour on a church errand her husband had contrived for her to do. 1 hour, and now this? Sarah covered her mouth and turned away, hastening from the sight and stench of the filth, taking her baby girl to lay her in a crib. With her hands trembling, she left the screaming infant, whose wails intensified as she turned away from her. Shame burned through Sarah. How could she call the church elders or talk to Mother Stone about something like this? How did a preacher's wife, the first lady of the church, force her lips to say that her husband, the Reverend Richards, had lost his natural black mind? Amid the now hiccuping cries from the nursery, Sarah became very still as she heard movement in the small clapboard house below her. There were two voices, one soft, seductive. The other was that of her husband. He brought this whore back to his home again? Once wasn't enough. Did he think she was so foolish as to run another errand at night again so he could get away with doing God knows what? Couldn't he hear his own child screaming her lungs out? And wouldn't he know his wife was upstairs? Did he have so little respect for her, or was it that this whore's pull was that strong? Tears of bitter rage and hurt stung Sarah's eyes, the pain of her acknowledgement almost crushing her ribcage as the muscles around her heart constricted. This woman, this transgressor, had a hold on her husband that not even the Lord could seem to break, because Father God knew she preyed on it from the first inkling of doubt. Now, her husband had brought a violator back into his house, correction, her house. A home designed for a minister, his wife, and children across the street from hallowed ground. Sarah felt her knees begin to buckle as she envisioned the faces of loyal parishioners who hung on the good reverend's every word, just as she once had. This house was not a home, nor was it a place where she or her child could find peace. She resisted her first instinct, which was to barrel downstairs to confront her husband and the heifer that had crossed her threshold. But something slithered inside Sarah's soul and gave